And finally today, dirt, sun and strategically drilled holes. That's what makes a perfect bee hotel, according to one young ecologist. Numurkah local and Master of Bioscience student Clancy Lester wants to start a bee hotel revolution to provide safe nesting habitat for our many native bees. Mr. Lester says he first got stung by the bee bug while up north.
Yeah, so it's something that's only happened just recently. It was only a couple of years ago I would have known as much as the next person about native bees, and then I had this opportunity to go up into Arnhem Land to live in Indigenous communities and go out on the homelands with the Yolngu people, and that was to study the stingless bees up there, which are a really big part of the culture because they harvest the stingless bee honey. They call it sugar bag or cuckoo, and it's a big part of their culture, and we went up there to study it because they've been worried about declines in recent years. That was sort of my introduction to native bees, and then since then I've just really fallen in love with the awesome diversity of native bees and just really immersed myself in it.
How much do you think the average Aussie knows about native bees? Do you think they are even aware that they're out there?
When you ask the average person about native bees or just bees, they would think obviously honeybees. That's why the average person either doesn't know that native bees exist at all in Australia, or they might have heard of maybe the blue-banded bee or a couple of the species which are really conspicuous or have those diagnostic features. And yeah, there's no chance that if you ask someone walking down the street that they would know that there's 2,000 species that are native to Australia, and just an incredible diversity that we do have here.
And so what are the main threats to native bee species here? Because you mentioned that, the Yolngu people are concerned about a decline up in Arnhem Land. So what are the main threats that they're facing?
Well, there's the land clearing and the habitat loss and the fragmentation of populations. But there's also been some more recent threats with pesticides, which a lot of them have been banned, and insecticides like the neonicotinoids, and climate change. And they're trying to prove this looking at the phenology changes in flowering plants, because with warmer climates or flowering plants, they're changing their times that the flowers are available, and when there's not as much overlap with the foraging behaviours and the times which bees are active throughout the year, when there's less overlap, this also impacts.
So it's your hope to get these bee hotels in the backyards of every Aussie, but how do they actually work? So what's the nitty-gritty side of it?
The reason they work is because they're the nesting habitat. They're simulating the natural habitat which native bees nest in. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet as well is most of all of the 2,000 species of native bees are solitary, which means that one female will occupy a nest and lay the eggs on her own. They don't have hives. There's only 11 species of social bees in Australia. That's another thing that the average person doesn't know much about. And so these bee hotels are designed for solitary bees to replicate or simulate the natural environment for where they would normally nest. And so that's why there's a range of designs for these bee hotels, because we've got ground nesting bees, like the most popular blue-banded bee, and these just nest in the ground in sedimentary soils like sandbanks and clay banks and this sorts of thing. And so the bee hotels which replicate that sort of environment can be just mixing sand and clay together. One of the really popular sort of types of soils to use is the tennis court clay. And you can just compact these into different containers. People use old the pots from pot plants that instead of throwing them out, they can fill them with clay and use them as bee hotels. People use the 2-litre almond milk or the alternative milk containers to cut the lid off them and fill them with clay. And it's good to have a few of these because a lot of ground nesting bees, like the blue-banded bees, can nest in aggregations at times. So it's good to have a few of them together. Or just leaving bare patches of soil in your garden is another way.
That was Clancy Lester, Numurkah local and Master of Bioscience student, speaking to you there. And you can hear his passion, so I'm sure he'll go far. All the best with it, Clancy. That just about wraps up today's Rural Report.